Self-realization. According to Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharishi, devotee asked, "How can I attain self-realization?" Maharishi said, "Realization is nothing to be gained afresh. It is already there. All that is necessary is to get rid of the thought, I have not realized." Stillness or peace is realization. There is no moment when the self is not. So long as there is doubt or the feeling of non realization, the attempt should be made to rid oneself of these thoughts. They are due to the identification of the self with the not self. When the not self disappears, the self alone remains. To make room, it is enough that the cramping be removed. Room is not brought in from elsewhere. Devotee asked, "Since realization is not possible without vasana, how am I to realize that state in which the vasanas are effectively destroyed?" Maharishi said, "You are in that state now." Devotee asked, "Does it mean that by holding on to the self, the vasanas should be destroyed as and when they emerge?" Maharishi said, "They will themselves be destroyed if you remain as you are." Devotee asked, "How shall I reach the self?" Maharishi said, "There is no reaching the self. If the self were to be reached, it would mean that the self is not here and now, but is yet to be obtained. What is not afresh will also be lost, so it will be impermanent. What is not permanent is not worth striving for. So I say the self is not reached. You are the self, you are already that. The fact is, you are ignorant of your blissful state. Ignorance supervenes and draws a veil over the pure self, which is bliss. Attempts are directed only to remove this veil of ignorance, which is merely wrong knowledge. The wrong knowledge is the false identification of the self with the body, mind, etc. The false identification must go, and then the self alone remains. Therefore, realization is for everyone. Realization makes no differences between aspirants. This very doubt whether you can realize and the notion I have not realized are themselves the obstacles. Be free from these obstacles also. Devotee asked, "What is the use of samadhi and does thought subsist then?" Maharishi said, "Samadhi alone can reveal the truth. Thoughts cast a veil over reality, and so it is not realized as such in states other than samadhi. In samadhi, there is only the feeling I am and no thoughts. The experience I am is being still." Devotee asked, "How can I repeat the experience of samadhi or the stillness that I obtain here?" Maharishi said, "Your present experience is due to the influence of the atmosphere in which you find yourself. Can you have it outside this atmosphere? The experience is spasmodic until it becomes permanent. Practice is necessary." Devotee asked, "One has at times vivid flashes of a consciousness whose center is outside the normal self and which seems to be all inclusive without concerning ourselves with philosophical concepts. How would Bhagwan advise me to work toward getting, retaining, and extending those rare flashes? Does abhyasa in such experience involve retirement?" Maharishi said, "Outside, for whom is the inside or outside? These can exist only as long as they are subject and object. For whom are these two again? On investigation, you will find that they resolve into the subject only. See who is the subject, and this inquiry leads you to pure consciousness beyond the subject. The normal self is the mind. The mind is with limitations, but pure consciousness is beyond limitations and is reached by investigation as above outlined." getting. The self is always there. You have only to remove the wheel obstructing the revelation to the self. Retaining, once you realize the self, it becomes your direct and immediate experience. It is never lost. Extending, there is no extending of the self, for it is as ever without contraction or expansion. Retirement, abiding in the self in solitude, because there is nothing alien to the self. Retirement must be from someone, place, or state to another. There is neither the one nor the other part from the self. All being the self, retirement is impossible and inconceivable. Abhyasa is the only prevention of disturbance to the inherent peace. You are always in your natural state, whether you make abhyasa or not. To remain as you are without question or doubt is your natural state. Devotee asked, on realizing samadhi doesn't obtain siddhis also. Maharishi said, in order to display siddhis, there must be others to recognize them. That means there is no jnana in the one who displays them. Therefore, siddhis are not worth a thought. Jnana alone is to be aimed at and gained. Devotee asked, does my realization help others? Maharishi said, yes, and it is the best help that you can possibly render to others. Those who have discovered great truths have done so in the still depths of the self, but really there are no others to be helped, for the realized being sees only the self, just as the goldsmith sees only the gold while valuing it in various jewels made of gold. When you identify yourself with the body, name and form are there, but when you transcend the body consciousness, the others also disappears. The realized one doesn't see the world as different from himself. Would it not be better if the saints mix with others? Asked devotee. Maharishi said, there are no others to mix with. The self is the only reality. Devotee asked, should I not try to help the suffering world? Maharishi said, the power that created you has created the world as well. If it can take care of you, it can similarly take care of the world also. If God has created the world, it is His business to look after it, not yours. Devotee, is it not our duty to be patriots? Bhagwan said, your duty is to be and not to be this or that. I am that, I am sums up the whole truth. The method is summarized in be still. And what does stillness means? Devotee asks, it means destroy yourself, because every name and form is the cause of trouble. I is the self, I am this is the ego. When the I is kept us as the I only, it is the self. When it flies off at a tangent and says, I am this or that, I am such and such, it is the ego. Devotee asks, who then is God? Maharishi said, the self is God, I am is God. If God is apart from the self, he must be a selfless God, which is absurd. All that is required to realize the self is to be still. What can be easier than that? Hence, Atma Vidya is the easiest to attain. Hari Om Tat Sat.